thank you so much for joining us today. Today we'll be speaking about how people find ways to stay engaged, socially engaged in life after a dementia diagnosis. So it's really nice to have three people here today: Peter, Middleton, George Rook, and Gail Gregory joining us today. So thank you all for being here today. So I think I just want to start off with, I mean, and I've asked this to other people before, it's, during the COVID pandemic, that it was certainly really hard on everyone, not being able to go out and see friends and things like that. I was wondering, now that things seem to be opening up, like, how are you guys feeling? Maybe we can start with Peter. Peter, I was just talking to you about it. Like, how is it to be able to go out again?
Well, I was lucky enough to have a week's vacation last week. I went to the Isle of Wight,
right,
which is a lovely little island just off of the south coast of England, with lots to see and do.
Right.
And last week was the week when things really started to open up. We were allowed indoors for meals and all sorts of attractions.
I've been indoors for the last 15 months.
And opened up. And, it was wonderful to see people smiling. I mean, the people who were serving us in the restaurants were smiling. Things were getting back to normal. And I did wonder whether I would find that I had some sort of sensory overload with the closest of people and all the noise that was going on. And I must admit, I was a little bit uncomfortable once or twice, but by and large, I thought I coped really well. There's a new etiquette that's grown up since COVID-19 hit the world. And people are a little bit more conscientious about where they are. They have a better spatial awareness and they're more courteous, I think, than they used to be. And I hope that things stay like that.
And I think I want to go back a little bit and ask Peter, why don't we start with you about, what were, some of the earliest signs of dementia that you noticed? Like, how did it all begin for you in terms of the road to diagnosis then?
For me, well, there came a time when I realized that I wasn't performing as well as I used to at work. My decision making was not as confident as it used to be, and I was making elementary mistakes. For instance, I would go to a meeting and find that I turned up to the wrong venue or on the wrong day or at the wrong time, something that I've never done before. And that was in spite of being a very good timekeeper and very particular about keeping diaries. And I knew that I was not the person that I used to be. Something inside told me. And that was when I contacted my doctor.
And Gail, how about yourself?
Yeah, I ran my own business, an embroidery business, taking orders over the telephone, which was becoming increasingly difficult because I couldn't remember what I was being told. And some of the messages that were coming through the telephone, it was like I was hearing something different. So I was making a lot of mistakes, spelling mistakes were being made, and yeah, orders were going out wrong. I thought they were right, but they wasn't. So yeah, I think that's when we noticed, and a bit like Peter, you just know that there's something not right. You know yourself. Yeah, there's only you knows yourself, and you just know that there's something not right.
And George?
Yeah, it was mainly through work and difficulties there, like remembering who said what in various meetings, and I ended up having to make copious notes all the time about everything. And I found it increasingly hard to, I'll call it multitask. I'm talking about things like sort of being interrupted all the time by people asking you things. When you're doing something and someone knocks on the door. I was working in a school as a manager, and it was just very busy. And I found I couldn't cope with it. I also became a bit disinhibited, mainly at home, I have to say, in terms of language and behaviours generally. And I lost the ability to remember names completely, and I was finding it harder and harder to find words, and sometimes came out with entirely the wrong words, much to the amusement of people around me, but not always appropriately.
Right. And I was wondering what the the diagnosis process was like for you all, because Peter, I remember you mentioned that at first the doctor didn't think it was dementia, right? Is that correct? Can you run us through the process?
Well, yeah, sure. The diagnosis process for me lasted nearly 2 years. And I think I'm certainly not unique in that, because what happens is here in the UK, with our wonderful National Health Service, you get a 10-minute doctor slot. And in 10 minutes, the doctor needs to diagnose you. And it's very easy, of course, to diagnose somebody with anxiety and depression, write out a sick note and fill them with antidepressants. And that's what happened to me. And, you know, doctors are the boss. So I went home and sat at home. But I knew that I knew I wasn't depressed. I knew I didn't have anxiety. Well, I had some, of course, because I knew there was something wrong with me. And so it went on. But eventually I was lucky that my employer, Northamptonshire Police at that time, had a good occupational health doctor. And as soon as I went to see the occupational health doctor, she looked at me and immediately said, I believe you may have dementia. And it was her who managed to get me an appointment with a neurologist and an MRI scan. You know, MRI scans are expensive. And so getting one is not an easy thing. And of course, as soon as that happened, I was diagnosed, and all of a sudden a great weight was lifted off my shoulders because I actually knew what the problem was.
Right. And it was the diagnosis was early onset Alzheimer's. Is that the specific diagnosis?
Yes, it was. Yes.
Yeah. And how about you yourself, Gail? What was the process like for you?
Yeah, I'd been suffering from depression a couple of years before I was actually diagnosed, and told the doctor then that it wasn't depression, that I knew that there was something else going on. And he'd sent me to a counsellor, and I was having counselling. And every time I went to the counsellor, I said, sometimes I feel like I'm going mad. This is not depression. This is something totally different. And she told me to keep going back to the doctors, which just wanted, well, just hand out the antidepressants, which I didn't take. I wouldn't take them. And then we moved. And lucky for me, I got a wonderful doctor who, on the day that I went and told him that I thought that I was having problems, memory problems, confusion, immediately carried out a very simple test like they do. What day is it and what time is it? Can you draw a clock? And just the simple things. And I think I got 9 things wrong out of 10. And they said, right, we're going to refer you to the memory clinic. And I think it took me about 12 months to get the diagnosis of early onset Alzheimer's through blood tests and MRI scans and the various tests that they put you through. Which it's a long, drawn-out process, but they got there in the end.
And when you finally received the diagnosis, you know, Peter said it was a relief for him. I was wondering, how about for you? What was your initial reactions to it?
Yeah, it is a relief, but it's also it's gut-wrenching, because I was 54 when I was diagnosed, and the negativity of when you receive that diagnosis from those medical people, it's all about going and making a will and going and doing the power of attorney, and everything is so negative. You're not going to be able to do this and you're not going to be able to do that. And I walked out of that room with my husband, and I was numb, absolutely numb. And I think I was like that for a couple of weeks, until you sort of start working things through and thinking, well, life's too short to just sit here and let this disease take over. And this is where I joined in with some wonderful groups and a new life started. So for me, I look at dementia as a new chapter in my life. It's a new me.
And what did you know about like dementia before you were diagnosed and before you even noticed symptoms, and like how did your view of dementia change after your diagnosis?
I didn't know very much about dementia, apart from my grandma had dementia, but she was in her late 80s. My granddad had Parkinson's disease, but we didn't have much contact with my granddad, so I didn't know much about that, and just thought that dementia was an old person's disease. And yeah, so when I was diagnosed, I think that's another thing why everything's so negative, because nobody tells you that there's actually a start to dementia. It's not just an end. And I think that's what we need to get across to people now, is that we start with this disease, but we've also a long way to go before we get to the end. There's all this middle bit that we've got to live. And that's how it is for me now. I'm living.
Yeah, one of the things that people like me often say is the brain disease that actually leads to Alzheimer's and a number of the other variants will have been in your brain for 20 to 30 years before the symptoms become obvious. So, you know, you're only, as Gail just said, you might be halfway down the slippery slope and all that, and you know, there is only one way with it. At the same time, there could be a long way to go. I mean, I was diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment around about 5 years before I actually got a diagnosis of dementia. But I went to my local GP and general doctor, and said, look, I think I need to be referred. And he said, well, what's the point? If it's vascular dementia, which we thought, there's no treatment for it. There's nothing would change. What's the point? I'm not going to. Go away. And he said the same thing a year later. And it was only the following year when I went with my dear wife, we both just sat there and said, you are going to refer me. So yeah, I had a lot of tests, and I tell you what, something really interesting that people should know. The three of us have still got pretty much the power of speech, let's say. Everybody loses different bits of their brains at different times. We all have different symptoms, but the three of us, well, I certainly know I have, and I suspect the other two will have had people say to you, you haven't got dementia. How can you possibly have dementia? Because you can still speak. Well. So that leads on to the biggest misconception about dementia and the stereotypes. And the fact that when you're given a diagnosis, I was told, quite literally, don't take any risks, don't get tired, stop doing as much. And that was exactly the wrong thing to be told. And also make sure you will. What?
And who is that telling you? Who's telling
that was the memory service, the people who provided the diagnosis. It was all about being disabled rather than enabled.
Right. And so, George, just to clarify, so you were first diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment.
Yeah.
A few years later, what was the diagnosis a few years later?
That's right, yeah.
A few years later, it was mixed dementia, right? That was the final.
Yeah, I have Alzheimer's and vascular dementia.
Right.
Diagnosed at 63, I think it was.
Right. And George, you mentioned that, you know, everyone contends with like different symptoms at different stages of the disease, right? So how about, currently, what are the main symptoms, the day-to-day symptoms that?
For me, okay, my balance has got quite bad, and I have sort of moments of almost falling over, which I'm just not prepared for, by definition, I suppose. I get tired. I do get tired very easily. I sometimes find noise really difficult to cope with. Noise or too many people talking either to me or across me. I cannot process it fast enough, and it just gets. I just have to withdraw. I mean, Peter was talking about going to a restaurant. I couldn't do that now, because I know that I would just be submerged by all the clanking, the clinking, the noises, and the waiters. Oh no, not well. The chef shouting. That's what they do, I think. No, those are the main symptoms. I mean, there are lots of little things as well. I find it very difficult to read a book now, not because I can't understand the words, but because my attention span is much shorter, and I, in a sense, I can't, or I'm not prepared to wade through a book to get to the end. I'd love to start a book, and I often don't get beyond about page 50. Just something about it. I don't know. I used to read a hell of a lot. I used to teach English and whatever else.
Peter, how about yourself? What are the common day-to-day symptoms that you're dealing with?
Well, very similar to George, I think sensory overload is a problem. But most of the time I'm in my comfort zone, and I'm just ploughing along and don't notice any difference. But every now and then you're confronted by a change.
Yeah.
And it just knocks you back, and it disappoints you, and you think, I can't do that anymore. Yeah. I used to be able to do that, and now I can't do it. So I find, for instance, that I find it difficult to control my emotions a little bit. Not anger, but just overwhelming emotion, elation or sadness comes upon me much more than it used to. I can listen to music and burst into tears. It affects me very deeply, and it didn't used to. And that can happen whether I'm indoors or if I'm out. And there is a worry there that it's, my children, I'm a bit embarrassed that I might frighten my children with that sort of thing, But so there is that. Losing things, of course, all the time. That just gets worse and worse. But we develop coping strategies. So by and large, life is good. It's just that every now and then you're confronted by something that you just can't do the way you used to do it. And that's a sad feeling, because that the disease is progressing.
Right. And how do you cope with, experience that loss and some of the things that you're not able to do as well anymore? I speak to my wife straight away. She wouldn't call herself my carer. She'd say she's my PR at the moment, or my reminder. And because sharing is half of the, it releases the pressure. I find so. But of course, it puts pressure on my wife. But at least she knows where I am at in my head at the time. Yeah, so I'll do that. I'll try and work out coping strategies. If I can't do A anymore, I'll try to use strategy B and C to cope and make A possible again. So as George says, I write copious notes. I've got mine here. They're always by my side. I have voice notes, any gadget I can think of to assist me in what I'm doing, and it works pretty well. George, what was that you showed? You had a.
Oh, that's a card we have in something called the Dementia. Yours is fancy. Dementia Empowerment Engagement Project, DEEP, which we're all part of, affiliated or members of, whatever. there was something that Peter said that I was going to comment on, but it's gone again. Oops.
And,
Sorry.
No worries, George. And George, I wanted to touch a point that you brought up is that, you know, some people would come up to you and say, like, you have dementia, like they can't tell, right? So what do you think is a better way for people to approach a person with dementia? Because I think sometimes when people find out, they don't know how to talk to a person with dementia.
No, well, okay. It's a bit like when you go and meet someone whose partner's just died. What the hell do you say? Well, the thing to do is to listen, and not think that is what's important. The dementia is not what's important. What's important is me, and what goes on in there in terms of my feelings, my desires, my wishes, and my fears. So instead of, I mean, you know, it's actually a GP who I know reasonably well, not as well as I might now, because she has said on 2 occasions when visiting as a friend, you sure they got the diagnosis right? And because she is assuming, as a lot of people do, that if you have dementia, you are unable to do anything. You are sitting in a chair, staring at a wall, probably slobbering, and being fed through with a spoon, if you're lucky. But as we've said, it starts somewhere, and we are just somewhere on that road. The fact that we can talk and that I can cook, as long as there's no one else around. I can't cook if there are other people in the kitchen. I just go to pieces. The fact that we can still do things makes people think, oh, you can't have it. But it's like having cancer. It's like having diabetes. It's not anything like that. It's just a disease, and you're somewhere along that road. Goodness knows where we started that, but that's where I finished.
Right. And I mean, I was wondering, like, you know, you talked about like that you could still engage and do things.
Yeah.
Contrary to what a lot of
we all 3 do. We really do.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask, like, what are, after your diagnosis, like, what have been some of the activities or commitment or engagement?
Okay, so after diagnosis, it took a while, because like most people, I was given a stack of leaflets about dementia, but I was not given anything about what I could do locally to, I don't know, make friends, to share my experiences, peer support, that sort of stuff. And it took about a year and a half before, by chance, probably through Twitter actually, I found out about this deep group and went, got myself invited to one of their Welsh conferences meetings. And from then on, everything opened up. Like for Gail, I know she's found that. I don't know Peter well enough, but I just rather suspect the same. When we meet other people with the disease and can just talk and natter and be stupid occasionally and quite often rude, we are with people who understand and people who don't question, and conversations go all over the place because none of us can sort of keep on track anytime, but it's good fun and we learn to do things. So, you know, in the last 18 months, I've started learning to carve wood and to paint with watercolor. Gail can tell you, we haven't got time for her to tell you all, about all the stuff she can do. And I'm sure Peter is very techie and does a lot of stuff to help people with using, well, technology. I'll stop there because Gail should speak.
Gail, would you like to expand on that?
Yeah, for me, I started when lockdown started. I found the deep groups and could see people struggling, and wanted to give them something to do. And it's all about giving people a purpose, and it's all about encouraging people and building confidence. And I'm a great believer in crafting and finding something that you're interested in and something that you can do, whether it be photography, art, anything, card making. And I started off by making fairy houses. And I did a little video on YouTube, which hubby had helped me to put together. And people were beginning to ask me how to do this, and people were engaging and all coming together. And then a wonderful project all came together with Innovations in Dementia, and that was the Craftivism project. And everybody were doing their crafts. So George was doing his wood carving, and the other people were doing the watercolors and clay, and it was just, everybody had a purpose. We were all coming together and having fun. It didn't matter if you was making mistakes, you was just all together having fun, and that's what life's about.
Right. And is crafting something that you've always done, like before your diagnosis, or is this like something that you found?
Yes, I'm a major crafter.
But then for George, it's something that you recently started, right?
Yeah, something new for me. I've always sort of tinkered a bit with stuff. Painting was new. I was told at school you can't paint because nobody ever told me how to do it. They just said, here's paint, here's brush, paint. And my imagination was so restricted by worrying that I might get it wrong that I did get it wrong. And I painted the same thing time and time again until the teacher said, I think you've painted that a few too many times now, and sort of threatened me with drastic punishments. So yeah, I mean, I'm still not brilliant painter by a long way, but I'm learning, and it's good fun. And when one goes right, it's really, really good. It's really horrible when they go wrong, but there we are.
And how about you, Peter? What are some of the things that you've been involved with that?
Well, can I just say, the term hidden disability is something that the public in general just can't come to terms with. If the three of us were sitting here with a prosthetic limbs, you just have a quick look and carry on and not remark upon it. But because we've got something that you can't see, you're intrigued. And so that's why people ask you questions and why they can't believe that you're not the person you used to be. Now, my short-term memory is not so good, but I come with a lifetime of skill and experience, things that I've been doing for donkey's years. And I've still got those skills, and I've still got that experience. I can still carve wood. I can still tinker with an engine. I can still drive, because that mirror signal maneuver thing, that's muscle memory. That's not short-term memory. What I can't always do is remember where the heck I'm going. And that's the difference. And that's what people need to see. I mean, you wouldn't ask Uncle Albert with a wooden leg, if he could still play football or some of the things, the silly things that we're asked. And you also wouldn't say, I have trouble putting my socks on too. Because you could, if I tell someone that I keep losing my mobile phone, they say, well, I'm always losing my mobile phone as well, as if they're trying to say that there's probably nothing wrong with you. Yeah. They're in denial. And it's a very strange thing to have to put up with. So what do? Tech me, anything. I do a lot of work with cameras and making animations, short films. I run a blog, anything that involves computing. I write apps, mobile phone apps, all sorts of stuff really, just to keep myself mentally nimble.
Right, and the three of you all have your own blogs, right? Can you tell me?
Yeah, I think we do. Yeah.
How did you decide to start it, and when?
Okay, I'll start. I have always fancied myself as a bit of a writer anyway, although never written a book or anything. And part of my work was writing a lot. And I just decided, well, if other people are writing about things happening to them, I will as well. And it's as simple as that. I just sort of got hold of an app and wrote, and found that after 2 or 3 of them, writing about how annoyed I was about the lack of support from health service, or about something that someone had said to me, like, you can't possibly have dementia, all that sort of stuff. Or about, for that matter, having nightmares because of the pills I take. That wonderful drug, donepezil, or Aricept, that's in England anyway, made a huge difference to my brain. It woke me up, meant that I could start doing things again. But it also, because I have to take it at night, I get a lot of bad dreams, very vivid ones, and I think a lot of people find it. I can't take it during the day because it drops my blood pressure so much I feel awful and have to lie down. Where do we start with that? Someone else talk.
Gail.
Yeah, okay, blogs. When did I start mine? Well, I took a computer literacy course when I was in the Royal Air Force in 1980. And I started to go on my old pet computer, my Vax Alpha, in the days before Windows. I started to go on what wasn't called the internet in those days, using Telnet, Janet, Kermit. So I was on chat groups, the early chat groups. This is when Tim Berners-Lee was in short trousers. And then he invented the hyperlink, and the World Wide Web came about.
Yeah.
And I continued to do that, hosting chat groups, hosting forums about various arcane topics, and Facebook groups for local charities and things like that, just to keep my hand in, really, and keep coding. So I've always done that. But blogging, I started blogging because A, somebody said perhaps I ought to, and B, I thought it's good to give myself a challenge and also a deadline, because I aim to put something up probably around about once a week. And I try and make it, if I can, a topic that's related not so much to my life, although it might touch upon it, but mostly a topic regarding dementia, just musing about something, or trying to gently bump people into doing something that I wish they would do. And it gives me a lot of pleasure. And I also enjoy putting the graphics on there as well, and the feedback I get from people. So for a lot of reasons, it's great therapy. I would advise everyone to do it.
And Gail, is it kind of the same for you, where writing is cathartic?
Yeah,
form of therapy?
I think for me the blogging, I started pretty much as I got just after I got my diagnosis, and it was like a release for me to put things down onto how I was feeling.
Yeah.
And also it was there was other people with dementia that was reading it, and people that didn't have dementia that was reading it, and finding things out that they didn't know about. And there's one lady in particular that's followed me from day one, that says, like, oh, now I know why my husband behaves like that, because she didn't know, but because I've said that that's what I did that day, or I was up all night because I can't sleep, she understands now why her husband can't sleep, because it's the dementia that's affecting him, and not just the fact that he's being awkward and he don't want to go to bed. But that's why I did the blogging, because it was helping me and helping others.
And it's always such a good feeling, and such an empowering feeling, right, when readers give you feedback about your writing and say that it's been helpful for them, right? I mean, I think for us as writers, even when just one writer does a comment like that on our article, it makes everything worth it, right? It makes everything.
Yeah, we have to be careful, of course, because we're only experts in ourselves and our own journey, and yet people sometimes get in touch asking for advice, medical advice, and all sorts of things, so you've got to be so careful that all you can do in that case, of course, is to signpost people and to try and motivate them a little bit and enthuse them into doing something. You're in a very powerful position when you're running a blog. You don't always think it, but you are. There are people out there who can be a bit fixated and can believe that you're some sort of expert in something, and of course we're not.
Right. Yeah, that's often the case, right? Where people ask you like medical specific questions, and you have to, like you said, you have to be very careful in terms of like not giving out medical advice, right, with these specific situations. So George, you made a comment about how your medical provider told you not to take risk and things like that after a diagnosis. So I think, to maybe wrap things up here, like, how do you think medical providers could do a better job in terms of helping their patients navigate their diagnosis?
Why did you leave this one till last? Okay. Well, basically, I don't know what it's like in America, but in Britain, there is, in reality, very little support provided for you after you've had a diagnosis. There's been a great push to increase the rate of diagnosis, quite rightly, because it was about 30% about 10 years ago. Now we're up to something like 60% or 65% or something, theoretically at least. But we haven't had the other side of that particular coin, which is providing support to people. Now, the three of us here don't need much very often. We might need some help thinking, because we might not know about some benefits we might be entitled to, tax reductions, that sort of stuff. Because until someone tells you, you don't know. But as we go on, we will need more support. It might be to go and do something that we need someone to go with us to help us do something like, going fishing or whatever it might be, to do things that matter to us. That's the key. I often say, what matters is what makes you smile or want to get up in the morning, because when that's gone, life ain't worth living. So we will at some stage need support to continue doing that. But there is very little out there until you're in danger of being admitted to hospital, in which case they move heaven and earth to keep you at home. That huge long bit between, there's just nothing. So what I'd say is what we need is a proper joined up system for providing the simple type things initially, and for someone to be able to keep in touch and help you with whatever you might need. In particular, at our sort of early stage, early to middle, what we need is peer support groups. The three of us have managed to access them, but they're very few and far between. It's probably out of 850, 900,000 people in the UK with dementia, probably no more than a couple of thousand go to any sort of peer support groups, and possibly less. That is appalling, because they're missing out so much, and people stay hidden away, feeling miserable, and they lose their self-identity.
And what do you think has been most important for preserving your sense of self-identity? What's been the most important things that you've done in your life to keep your sense of self-identity?
In the last few years since diagnosis, for me, it's been taking part in conversations with my peers, other people with dementia. I've been doing a lot of, attempting to influence providers of care and healthcare to actually improve things, going to conferences and talking, all sorts of stuff. And that's kept me active and given me a sense of real purpose. And because I found something I'm quite good at. I may not achieve a lot, because you still got to persuade the people to do something. But I find, it's finding what you're good at and doing it, and using, as Peter said earlier, the skills you've already got from, a lifetime. They don't just disappear. Yeah. And learning to do things like crafting and painting, right, and gardening.
And on that note, then, Peter and Gail, maybe to end on, like, what advice would you have for people who have dementia? what advice would you have for them to stay engaged and find purpose in life after the diagnosis?
For me, it will be find a group. Peer support groups, they are absolutely wonderful. You can talk to people, you can relax with people. They're in the same situation that you are. But not only that, every dementia diagnosis is different. Once you've met one person with dementia, that is the one person that you've met. Somebody else will be totally different. But you're in a group, in a room, or on Zoom, talking to people that have dementia, and you feel normal again. You're not standing out from the crowd. You feel normal, and it's all about starting to live your life again. And it's just a new chapter, and it's just, that's how it is. You know, just go, get out there and just live and enjoy yourself. Have fun. Do what you love to do. Even if it's just going for a walk, go for a walk. You can still do it.
And Peter?
Me, well, I just got to agree with my lovely colleagues, because they're absolutely right. Hold your hand up. You know, if you're drowning in loneliness, hold your hand up, and someone will notice you and come and rescue you, you know. But until you hold your hand up, no one's going to see you. And that's the problem we've got out there. We've got lots of drowning people, you know. And secondly, get a bit militant. You know, we need more provision for dementia. We need more diversity. You know, you know, you're interviewing 3 old white folk here. You know,
careful, Gail's not old yet.
Where are all the other elements, the wonderful elements of our community? I very seldom see black people, Asian people, people of you know, mixed race. We haven't uncovered so many parts of society and brought them on board with us to, you know, to complement what we do and to make us better and stronger. And we've got a lot of work to do. You've only got to look at the literature, the photographs of people who are living with dementia. They're all middle-class white folk of a certain age. Where are the people who are living with dementia in their 40s? You know, where are the gay and same-sex couples?
There are a lot of issues and difficulties that are very specific to LGBTQ people to do with dementia, because they find it so hard to actually admit to it, and then they can lose the way they cope because they can't remember it. And when they go into care homes, they sometimes often have to deny it because of the other residents' attitudes. And there's so much to do there. And
of course, they're less likely to have long-term partners who will care for them as they're further down the line. It's, you know, but we can help. You know, we can all help, but we've got to find these people, all these stragglers, and rescue them and bring them into the fold. You know, it's a big job, but I think it's an important one.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all so much for the great conversation. I appreciate all your thoughts and for you to share your experience. So thanks for joining us.
Our pleasure.
All right.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for giving us the opportunity.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, have a good day. Bye.
Bye.